What victim ended up being the bad guy after more information came out? Ana Yulia Quezada. She was dating a divorced man who had an 8-year-old son. One day, the kid goes missing and the news started interviewing the parents. She would always stand next to the dad crying and begging the kidnapper that, if they're watching, to please give back the kid. I remember this very vividly watching the news. Turns out there was no kidnapping. She'd killed the kid the very first day of his disappearance and played her part around her boyfriend and the news. People believe she did it out of jealousy and in hopes of convincing her boyfriend to move to her country to get over his kid. Her 4-year-old daughter had also died in 1996 in some strange circumstances. In 1864, a train pulled into London carrying a bloodied, unconscious man, Franz Müller. Police were alerted, and when the man came to Müller told them as they were riding, 2 men approached him and tried to rob him. However, Mr. Müller fought back, was shot, and then left behind as the robbers jumped off the train. What actually happened was Franz Müller attacked a Mr. Thomas Briggs, a 69-year-old banker, and robbed him of his gold chain and pocket watch. Later in the day, Mr. Briggs would be found unconscious, lying on the tracks, because Müller shot him and threw Briggs off the train. Briggs would soon pass away from his injuries. Police were super suspicious, and then a pawn shop owner came forward, identifying Müller as selling him Briggs's gold chain. London police issued a warrant. However, Müller had already fled the hospital and boarded a sail ship for New York. Scotland Yard inspectors took a steamship to NY, beating Müller by weeks. They and an entire crowd of people were waiting at the docks when Müller arrived. And that's the story of the first murder on a train. There's a cool book about it, Mr. Briggs's Hat. Corey Harris. He's the guy who went viral earlier this year for showing up at a Zoom court hearing driving while on suspended license. He spent 2 days in jail. Then it was reported that Harris should have had his license reinstated 2 years prior. Harris's attorney sets up interviews with local TV stations stating his innocence. Good Morning America does a piece on Harris and lectures the viewer to not judge a book by its cover. Harris goes back to court. The judge does his homework and discovers Harris has never had a license in Michigan or any other state, yet has been to Secretary of State office multiple times to renew his ID. The opportunity was there for him to get a license. He chose not to. He goes viral again, but because he lied and embarrassed so many people along the way. Recently, there was this dude in a town in Ontario who filed assault charges on his neighbor for spraying him with a water gun. Her story comes out first to the media, saying how she can't return to work as school support staff until the charges are sorted out, and gives a story about how she was just having a fun water gun fight with the neighbor kids and accidentally sprayed the neighbor while he was mowing his lawn. Week later, his story gets published in the paper. He's repeatedly received targeted harassment for this neighbor and others. He says likely because he's the one black guy on the street of a small town in an interracial marriage, and releases his security camera footage of him just casually cutting his lawn, with the other neighbor actively telling the kid to bring her the water gun while she's standing behind him, then sprays him directly with it. And the camera also captures the audio of the aftermath, where some racial slurs are dropped, also a recurring thing. What's also funny is that the neighbor claimed that there was some language barrier misunderstanding between them. The guy is straight up Canadian and speaks clearer than most people. I used to install security cameras as a side job. I was asked to help out a lady going through a horrible divorce. Her soon-to-be ex-husband was sending her threatening text messages from burner phones. He was coming by all hours of the night and breaking windows, and a few times attempted to set their house on fire. A friend of hers reached out to me and explained the situation and asked if I could help her in any way. I purchased cameras and an NVR and went over one night in February and installed the whole system, wires and all. I never felt scared during any of my installations, some of which were in really bad neighborhoods. But this psycho had me worried, so I did this job armed. After finishing up, I showed her how the system works and told her to call me if she ever needed anything else. A couple weeks later, I get a call from a fire investigator asking me for help in recovering video. He told me that the guy had returned, broke out a first-floor window, and threw in a Molotov cocktail, causing the first floor of the house to be engulfed in flames. The woman and her 2 daughters were trapped upstairs. The police showed before the fire department, and they had to grab an extension ladder from a neighbor's house and rescue the family through a second-floor window. One of the girls was taken to the hospital for smoke inhalation. I walked the guy through the process of pulling up the video. Once he got to the right time on the camera, facing the bathroom window, he said, "The video just goes blank." I told him that I set the video cameras to be super sensitive to movement. So the only way it can go blank is if the camera is removed or damaged in some way. I directed him to a camera that would cover the area under the camera that goes blank, and he should see someone mess with it. He tells me that nobody ever approached it. I then informed him that the only way that this scenario is possible is if the guy got into the house and disconnected the feed from inside. We concluded our conversation since he would now need to pour through a lot of video in order to find this man going into the house. About a month passes by, and I am driving to work. I hear the woman's name, who I had been helping, mentioned on the radio during a news segment. I start paying attention and soon find myself feeling weightless in my chair. It had not been her husband at all. She had been the one doing all these things in order to get her husband arrested and sent to jail. She had bought burner phones to send herself text messages. She had been going out at night and breaking the windows. She had been taking the family out to dinner, excusing herself to go to the restroom, then driving home to break a window and try to set the house on fire before returning to the restaurant. She had been the one to disconnect the camera from inside the house the night that she almost killed her kids in an attempt to frame her husband. I thought I was protecting her from a psycho, but turns out I was helping the psycho. TLDR. I thought I was helping a victim by protecting her from her soon-to-be ex-husband, but she was trying to frame him by risking her kids' lives. Mick Philpott. He wanted to show that his ex was violent and dangerous to their children, and he wanted to play the hero. He devised a plan to set alight to his family home, and he would rescue the children. Unfortunately, the fire took hold faster than he anticipated, and all 6 of his children died. He then played the victim on TV shows and news until they discovered that he set the fire. Dave Krupa had been dating casually after his 12-year relationship ended and ended up meeting a woman named Carrie Farver. They hit it off instantly and spent a lot of time together over the next few weeks. This was until Carrie texted Dave at work and asked if they could move in together. This was a shock to Dave, and he said no. Carrie then sent a super nasty response and basically told him to fuck off. Dave then started getting bombarded with texts and emails from Carrie. The harassment, already relentless and almost daily, started to expand to include other people in Dave's life, like his recent ex, sort of girlfriend Liz Goliar. Liz became a constant target of Carrie's stalking and harassment. Things escalated. At one point, Liz's house burned down. I suggest looking up this case for the full details because there's so much more to this story. As it turned out, Liz had killed Carrie, ostensibly out of jealousy of Kari's quickly growing relationship with Dave. Liz then began impersonating Kari and sending messages pretending to be Kari. That's right, Liz was the one behind all those messages. The whole story is absolutely wild. I suggest checking out the book A Tangled Web by Leslie Rule for the full story. It's absolutely nuts.